All right, everyone, the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is write my name on the back of my paper. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, and I'm going to label this paper like my index card. So I have a T for top, B for bottom, L for left, and R for right. So I'm going to go ahead and do that exact same thing on my paper. Okay. All right, so I have top, bottom, left, right. Okay, and then the next thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm going to create a grid on my paper. All right, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my ruler, and this piece of paper is 9 inches by 9 inches, and depending on the ruler that you have, your measurement might not start right at the edge here. Okay, so wherever it says your start place is, you're gonna line it up with that. Okay, and then you're going to locate the 4.5 mark. Okay, so on your ruler you have the longest lines with the numbers, those are the inches. Okay, and between each inch you have this halfway mark here. Okay, it's the half-inch mark. Okay, so you can kind of see it right here. So half of 9 is 4.5. So I'm going to put a mark right there, and I'm going to do that for each side. Okay, so I'm going to flip my paper, or rotate my paper, 4.5, flip my paper, 4.5, flip my paper, 4.5. Okay, and then I'm going to connect the dots. Okay, so I'm going to create basically a giant plus sign on my paper, and this will be my grid. Okay, so my paper, I'm lining up my ruler from one notch to the other like this. Okay, I've got one here, and then I'm going to go ahead and do this on the other side. So left to right, lining up my ruler, and then drawing that. Okay, so I have a giant plus sign. Now for my index card here, I have to basically do the same thing. So I'm gonna zoom you all in. And the tricky part about this is that not everyone's image on their card is the same size. Okay, so I'm gonna measure mine real quick. And I will give you some options. All right, so I have here, my little square is 1.5 inches. Okay, so half of that will be about 3/4 of an inch. All right, which means I'm gonna put a little notch right there. All right, now couple of things. If you measure your little swatch that you have here, your little piece of the puzzle, and it's not 1.5 inches, what I would do if I were you is eyeball where the halfway mark is, okay, on each side, and then connect the dots. All right. I can't remember exactly what size I made some of the end pieces, so the end pieces may be a little bit different. Okay, so if you have 1.5 inch piece, I'll share with you where the 3/4 mark is. If yours is bigger, you might just have to wing it. Okay, and that's okay, and I can help you do that. So 1.5 inches, the 3/4 mark, so this is the 1/2 inch mark, the 3/4 mark on here, you'll notice, so this is the inch mark, this is the 1/2 inch mark right here, and then the next one that is the next largest is the 3/4 mark. Okay, so I'm going to line this up, and essentially what I'm doing is creating the exact same grid on my small puzzle piece. All right, and what this is going to do, if I have the same grid on my larger paper and on my puzzle piece, it will allow me to enlarge this little piece of the puzzle in proportion. Okay, so I'm going to connect the dots on my puzzle piece by lining up my ruler. Please use your ruler for this. All right, and this is what I have. Okay, So now at this point in time, what I'm going to do is I am going to look at where my image or my main parts of my image appear in relation to this grid in order to enlarge this in proportion, okay, on my larger piece of paper. So proportion just means making things the right size in relation to the whole. So I have this small image here and I want to enlarge it, okay, on my paper. And I'm going to use this plus sign to help me with that, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and talk you all through it, and you are going to decide what it means for you, okay? So to start us off, I'm going to make sure top, bottom, left, right, top, bottom, left, right. And the main things that you want to start with are the outside. Whatever is on the outside of this image is going to be the most important, because anything that crosses over this border of your puzzle piece is going to connect with somebody else's. So you want to make sure that those lines match up, okay? So here's what I notice right now, okay? So on my piece here, I'm going to start with the left side first, okay? On the left side, I'll just share this with you. So halfway mark, I don't know if you guys can even see that. Halfway mark here, I would say a little bit above that, so about a little less than halfway above that quadrant, I've got something that goes off the side of the paper. So this matches, this is about the halfway point of this quadrant, so right about here, I would say, I've got the start of this line. Okay, so I'm gonna bring this down, kind of right like this, and this line kind of arcs over and it intersects with this section, not at the halfway mark because I've got this that comes up, but a little bit less than that, okay? So I have something that's going to look like this. And you'll notice that it dips down a little bit less than halfway. Okay, so something that looks like that. This is what I have so far. And then I have this, I don't know if this is a blade of grass or what it is, but it comes up right at about the halfway mark. So the halfway mark of this is about right here or so. So I'm going to make sure that this comes up right about there. Okay, so it intersects with that right here. It comes up about halfway or so on this quadrant, so I'm going to make it come up about halfway. And then it comes back down again. Now, one other thing I'm noticing here is that this goes all the way, it kind of angles down on a diagonal, and this is the halfway mark here. It's a little shy of that, okay? So if I bring this down, it's gonna look something kind of like this. Okay, and then at this point, I'm going to move over to this right here. Okay, so this right here, this little tiny part here is basically right here on my drawing. It's halfway mark is right about here. It's shifted over ever so slightly. It comes up just a smidge and then it angles over. And if I look at where it hits on this line, this is about halfway down. So halfway down here is right about here. And I'm gonna make it intersect with that line there. At this point, this kind of curves over and inward, right to about here. And if I look real quick, this here at the bottom hits about the halfway mark, okay? So I'm gonna make sure that that comes out about here and it comes up inward. I've got something that looks like that. All right. So this is what I have so far. I'm making this darker just so y'all can see it. I wouldn't do that on your piece yet. Okay. And then the last couple quadrants here, I'm gonna check out where this falls in relation to this, okay? So what I'm noticing is the halfway mark here, this extends just beyond that, okay? So the halfway mark is right about here. This extends to this side, just a little bit under that line, okay? So I'm gonna kind of sketch that out right there. It's gonna end here. And mine kind of hugs, it almost goes straight across here. And then it comes in and down as closer that I get to that center vertical. And it connects with that little tiny, that it almost makes like a little V shape about halfway down this intersecting line. Okay, last but not least, I'm gonna kind of do this last section. So I want to look at, before I figure out how much this actually takes up, let me look at this bottom edge. I wanna look at this bottom edge completely because the edges of this are the most important because it lines up with somebody else's puzzle piece. So where does this edge here end? It extends beyond the halfway mark. It's more like the 3/4 mark, okay? So if halfway is about here, 3/4 is right about here. And once we get these sketched out, what we will do is we will line these up and figure out if they indeed match up with somebody else's puzzle piece. And if they don't, we can make some changes. Okay, so this comes up almost halfway, a little shy of halfway. So kind of like that. And this comes over almost, not quite to that line, just a little shy of that. We've left like a 1/4. This is the half point, this is about the 1/4 mark, okay? And then this comes out and ever so slightly in kind of like that, okay? So this is what I have for this puzzle piece, okay? All right, so at this point in time, okay, this doesn't look like a whole lot, but what I did was I created a grid on my piece of paper. I created a corresponding grid on my puzzle piece, okay? And then I knew that the outermost edges were the most important, okay? So I have to get those lines that intersect with those edges, I have to get those as correct as possible because those will match up with somebody else's puzzle piece, okay? And then what I did was I used the grid line to think about how far over some of these shapes are. Are they halfway? Are they a 1/4 of the way? Are they 3/4 of the way? How far up does this go? Does it go halfway up, 1/4 of the way up, 3/4 of the way up, okay? So use the positioning of these shapes, okay? Think about them in correspondence with the grid lines, okay? Where does it intersect? Where does it overlap, okay? And that is, using the grid is the key for you to sketch these puzzle pieces out in proportion, meaning making them the correct size in relation to the whole.